Yes, it starts right now live.
Okay, is
One
anybody
moment.
online? Should I start my presentation?
Yes, so moment. One moment.
Okay. So let me know
Okay.
when I should start.
We are online. Hello, friends. Welcome to Soul Java channel with Reza. Reza, please introduce yourself.
Hi there. My name is Reza Rahman. I'm a principal program manager for Java on Azure. Basically, I look after all of the Java developers on the Microsoft Azure platform. But actually, obviously, my personal passion is Java E or Jakarta E. So I do a lot of work to enable the thing that I'll be presenting on today, which is how to enable Jakarta E applications on Azure. Okay. So what's next? What should we do next?
Yes, a presentation to your lecture. Yes.
Okay, so just get started.
Yes.
So when should we stop?
No. No. A moment.
Sure.
Can follow with the lecture.
How long is the talk? Let me check. All right. Let me. I'm looking at my channel right now to see how long I have. Hi, are you still there? Can you still hear me? Okay. So the talk is 1 hour. Is that right? Hi there. Can you hear me? Hi. Should I start the talk now? Okay. All right. I'm going to start the talk. It looks like it's okay to do so. Alrighty. So what is this talk about? This talk is about all of the ways that you can run a Java E application on the Azure cloud. So I actually don't have any slides for this talk at all. It is all about live coding and showing you how to do things as opposed to talking about what to do. So actually, I have something better than a slideshow, I hope. But because what I have is this GitHub repository. So in this GitHub repository, if you go to the GitHub repository, you can actually do everything that I'm going to show you today. And in fact, to be honest with you, if I went through this entire repository, this repository is actually a workshop. It takes about 4 to 6 hours to complete this workshop. So obviously with you, I only have 1 hour. So I won't be going through this entire workshop. What I'm going to do is show you some bits and pieces of it. So enough bits and pieces so that you can go ahead and get started by yourself and maybe go through the workshop by yourself. And it's designed to do that. So the first thing we're going to do before we do anything else is run an application on our local machine. So on my laptop, no cloud, no nothing. And I'm just going to go through the instructions on how to do this. So here's the instructions on how to do that. So there's some setup. I need JDK, I need Payara. Payara is what I'm going to be using, but you can use any Jakarta E application server you want. I'm going to be using Eclipse, but you can use any IDE. It's just a Maven application in the end. I'm going to use Docker. I'll explain why I'm using Docker in a second. Principally, the reason I'm using Docker is just to get you prepped, because I'm going to, at the end of the day, at the end of the presentation, I hope to show you Kubernetes. Okay, and in order to do the Kubernetes, it's actually useful to do Docker. And also, it's useful to do Docker because I don't want a database. This is a database. What I'm going to show you is a database-driven CRUD application. So I need a database of some kind. And honestly, there's no reason for me to install a database on my desktop. I don't use a database on a day-to-day basis. So actually installing it through Docker is a useful thing, even though I'm not using the cloud. So the first thing is, and you need this repository code, which is super simple to download. So that's an easy one. You can either clone or download it as zip, whatever you prefer. First thing is to actually run the database. So that's what I'm going to do. So here's the command to run the database. And I'll explain how this, what this command is doing if you've never seen Docker before. So here's Docker syntax. Docker run means run a Docker image. IT means make this interactive. And RM means don't cache this image. So by default in Docker, whenever you run an image, it's automatically cached to disk. I don't need that really. I'm giving my image a name, and I'm using the -v property to load up a persistent volume. So basically, I'm saying to the Docker image, hey, your path var lib PostgreSQL data maps to some local resource that's called PG data. And I need this because it's a database, and I don't want the data to go away when I shut down the container, because the container, when it shuts down the whole thing. It's going to just delete everything. So by specifying this persistent volume, the data remains even if I shut down the application. The -p command is interesting. So one of the more complex things you'll ever need to figure out while using Docker and Kubernetes is networking. Okay, so by default, what happens is, even though I'm running this Docker image locally, Docker is actually creating a small network inside of my machine. So it's almost like having a data center within your own machine. And what happens is all of the ports inside of that machine is actually blocked by default. So you won't be able to access anything, even if you're running a Docker image. So what use is it, right? So in order for you to access something, you need to use the -p argument to say, please expose this port. Right? So in this case, we're going to be exposing port 5432. And 5432 is where Postgres runs. So that's how I'm going to be able to communicate with Postgres outside of this Docker image. And the final argument is the image name, and which in this case is Postgres. So the image is actually stored up in Dockerhub. That's what I'm referencing. And I'm just going to run this database. So let's run it. And you notice it ran super fast. The reason it ran super fast is because I ran it once before, right? So because I've run it, the image is already downloaded. That's not always going to be the case, as we'll see in a moment, especially when we go towards demoing some of our Kubernetes stuff. You'll see that this Docker image loading and unloading actually takes a little bit of time, but not in this case. So we're good there. All right, so we have the database up and running. I've cheated a little bit, and I have everything set up on my machine already. I've got the JDK, I've got Eclipse, all the stuff you guys probably already know. I have Payara set up here, and I have the application. So the application I won't go over in too much detail. It's a very, very simple application. It's just got Jakarta EE8, by the way, not Java EE8, but Jakarta EE8 as its only dependency, Jakarta EE API, and that's it. It's a just plain old Jakarta EE8 application. Nothing very special about it. And so let me run this application locally. So I'm just going to say right-click and run as, run on server. And hopefully something is going to happen. My machine, I think, is a little bit slow today. So, it's always those things, right? It's Murphy's rule. Whenever you're doing a demo, something must go wrong. So my machine is asleep right at this moment. So let's hope the Payara deployment starts very soon. Okay, Payara is starting domain 1. Normally, this takes just a few seconds. This is not a very slow process. Not sure what is going on. It's quite possibly something to do with something running in the background or some such. All right. So Payara is started. The application is loaded. There's the application. It should show up on my browser Yeah, it's on the browser. This is a little interesting bug in the built-in browser of Eclipse. So let's take this URL and put it here. Okay. So as you can see, I've got from my previous run, I've got two instances of data in here. I'll put another one. All right. Let's say, yeah, there we go. And we have some data. It's just a basic CRUD application. If you wanted to, I could delete something, and there you go. Right? It's nothing fancy, and it's not supposed to be fancy. It's a very, very simple application. Nothing really much to it at all. So there you have it. A simple application running on my desktop. Nothing fancy, and you can set all this up yourself. Here's all the instructions to do that. Alrighty. So now let's get to the more interesting part, which is getting to run all of this on the cloud. And believe it or not, I actually don't need Eclipse anymore. I can do this completely without an IDE. So I'm going to just hit delete on that, and I'm just going to show you the code on my GitHub repo and basically do everything on the command line. I actually don't need the database either. So I'll shut that down, clear my screen, and let's start from scratch. So there are many different ways of running applications on Azure. Okay, so this is the small part of my lecture part of my presentation today. So the different options are IaaS or infrastructure as a service. What is this? Well, this is really just a virtual machine running on Azure as opposed to running on your own data center. So it's really very similar to how you can think of running things on your own data center. It's very, very familiar. There's nothing really that crazy about it other than some simple setup stuff. Once you do the setup, you can just pretend that, oh, this is just another machine somewhere. I can just log into it and do whatever it is that I want. The other option is PaaS, or Platform as a Service. Now, what is this? So basically, this is where you don't have to do a lot of things by yourself, right? So you just point and click, and you go through a wizard, and the wizard creates all of the application setup for you. So right now, we do not, unfortunately, have a PaaS for Jakarta EE or Java EE. We used to, but we don't right at this moment. So we're actually working with our good friends at Payara to create a PaaS offering. So there's a little bit of detail about this over here. You can take a read at it. So until then, what can we do? Well, what is demoed here is that you can create a Java SE PaaS. So you can create a running instance, auto-scaled instance that has Java SE running on it. And what you can do is you can upload a jar file, okay, to run on it. So what in the PaaS section, what I do is basically I create a jar file using Payara to use the Java EE application. You can very easily do that. It's not very complicated at all. And then I just take that jar file and run it in our PaaS offering. So the next option down is something called Azure Container Instances. Well, what is this? What this is that it allows you to use Docker on the web, but you don't have to use Kubernetes. So if all you want to do is use Docker, you can you can use Docker to Dockerize your application, which I'll show you how to do. And then you don't have to deal with Kubernetes anymore, right? So all you can do is just upload your Docker image and get up and running. It's almost just as simple as the PaaS option. So feel free to take a look at that. And the last thing I'm going to show you is Kubernetes. Okay, so how do you run this application in a full-scale Kubernetes cluster environment? That's what I'm going to demonstrate. So what of these four things am I going to show you today? I'm going to show you the IaaS option, the infrastructure as a service option, because if you haven't looked at the cloud before, I want to show you just how familiar the cloud can be. Right? It's a really very, very simple thing. It's not all that complicated at all. The next thing I'm going to do is probably I'll have time to show you the Kubernetes portion. And the reason I'm going to show you the Kubernetes portion is because that is actually the most popular one that we see for Java EE workloads. When they come to Azure, most of the times they actually want Kubernetes. Okay, so I'll show you the most popular option, which is Kubernetes. And by the way, by doing that, I'll also show you some Docker. Okay. So let's start with the IaaS portion. So for IaaS, What I need is a database. Okay, so I'm not going to bother creating the database. As you'll see in the demo, the most painful part of the demo is actually setting up some kind of resource, setting something up in Azure. So I really don't want to do that. I want to try to cheat as much as possible so I can show you as much interesting stuff as possible. So the database we're going to use on Azure is Postgres. Same thing as I was doing on my own desktop, but this is going to be in Azure PaaS. So Azure actually has PaaS services for all kinds of databases. SQL Server, obviously, that shouldn't be a surprise. Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, all kinds of offerings. So we're going to use the Postgres Azure offering database. I'll show you how that looks like. So I'll open up the Azure portal. I like the Azure portal. People can use anything that they want. They can use a CLI, they can use Maven, they can use Azure DevOps, they can use Jenkins. I prefer the very low-tech approach of basically using our portal. So in my portal, if I go to resource groups, there'll be a bunch of resource groups here. But the one that we're interested in is called Jakarta Cafe Group, Reza. And in here, I have two different magic things that I created just before I started this presentation. One is the database. Okay, so there's Java EE Cafe DB. And as you can see, it's an Azure Postgres database. If I click on this thing, okay, you can see it's a Azure Postgres, Azure database for Postgres server. So this is just up and running for me. The other thing we'll take a look at, hopefully in a little bit, is this funky dude. And that is Azure Kubernetes service. So this is actually an Azure Kubernetes cluster. We'll make use of this later, so don't worry about it yet. So all you really need to do is know that I followed this little bit of instruction and went and created a Azure Postgres database, which you can do by yourself. Okay, so the next thing is where the magic happens, right? So I'm gonna create a machine for me, an instance of a machine for me on Azure that I can deploy my Jakarta application, just like I was deploying on my own machine. So let's go ahead and get that started. So the first thing is to actually go and create the virtual machine. And that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go to create resource. I want to create a virtual machine. Sorry, it's under compute. And what I want is basically an Ubuntu server, right? That's what I'm going to get started on. So I'll click on Ubuntu server. And it's going to give me a nice little UI. I'm going to pick the existing resource group that I already had, which is Jakarta Cafe Group. Okay, I'm going to give this a nice little name. So the nice little name is going to be Jakarta Cafe Server Reza. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this thing in here. All right. Okay, that's the name of my machine, virtual machine. It's in US East, which is where I am. Ubuntu Server LTS is all fine. These are all fine. I'm all okay with this. Normally, you want to, so at the end of the day, it's not very useful if you create this machine and you can't access it. Okay, so the way you access this is through SSH. Okay, and hopefully all of this is going to work, I hope. So I'm going to create a password as opposed to a SSH public key. I could create a SSH public key. I don't want to. It's more complicated. So in order to do that, I need to give it a username and password. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Hopefully this is, believe it or not, this is where I mess up the most. Okay, for some odd reason, I always mess this part up. So I'm going to give it the username of Payara, and my password is going to be secret12345 exclamation. Okay, so let me enter that. Okay, there we go. And I do want to open some ports, okay? Because if I don't open some ports, it's not very useful. I won't be able to do anything with this, right? So I need to open up port 22 for SSH access, port 80, and port 443. So I really want to open up basically all of the normal ports that you can think of. And I think that's all I really need to do. Let me double check my instructions. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. So this is where things are going to take a little bit of time. All right. So I'm going to hit the review and create button. because I did everything that I wanted to do. Validation has passed, and I'm going to hit create. All right. And this is where things are going to slow down a little bit. Okay. The reason it's going to slow down is because this is a resource creation step. And I promise you, this is the only resource creation step we're going to do during this demo. So the rest of the demo should be when you actually run the lab by yourself, unfortunately, you're going to have to sit through these kind of deployments and resource creation. So what I'm going to tell you is what I'm going to do next. Right? Once this machine is created, what do I do next? So my next step is going to be I need to log on onto this machine. How do I do that? I simply go to my command line, and I'm going to SSH into this machine. There's going to be a public IP that I'm going to show you how you get. So each virtual machine that you create is automatically has a public IP to it. You can log on onto that machine using that public IP. And after that, you need to do a little bit of setup. Okay, so basically, you're going to do everything that you would have done if your manager said, "Here's a fresh laptop. Go and do this thing." So these are the steps you would do in order to run this application. So the first thing is whatever you do, the problem is this is all in the cloud, right? So there's always, the version is always behind, right? So it's always some version of Ubuntu that's not the latest, right? So the first thing you need to do is I think I'm going to increase the font size because I want you guys to be able to see this. So the first thing is you need to do sudo apt update. So you need to update basically the operating system. Maybe I need to increase it just a little bit more. I think that's better. Or maybe even more. All right. Then next I need to install the JDK. So this is how I do that. It's a sudo apt install of OpenJDK 8. That's what I'm using. You need to install Maven. Normally you wouldn't do this. So in a production situation, what you're probably going to do is do that deployment through some CI/CD pipeline. But in this case, I just want to keep it very simple. Right? So I'm just going to pretend that, okay, there's no such thing as CI/CD, and you're going to do all of the installations by yourself. So you're going to build this application locally on that VM. Right? So in order to do that, you need to install Maven. Next thing is you need to download Payara, right? And so you can do that by just using wget on this machine. And Payara is available on a zip in a well-known URL. I'm a little unhappy they use Amazon AWS. I wish they used Azure instead. That's okay. And then I'm going to install unzip because I need to unzip the zip file. I'm going to unzip Payara, and that's it. After I do the unzip command, deployment is complete. So let's go ahead and actually, instead of me going through the steps, why don't I actually do the steps? So the public IP address is available here. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and bump back up and do SSH and into this box. So let's do that. All right, and paste. And I need the public IP. And I'm going to log on onto this machine. Okay, I hope this is going to work. Connection timed out. The problem with this is probably I am blocked. Okay, so let's take a look at networking. And cleanup pool 100. I'm going to go in here and say that I just want any. Okay, and I'm going to hit save here. Okay, I need to wait a little bit. So by default, Azure, the one that I'm using, the subscription that I'm using is very, very secure. So I can't actually do anything useful. Yes. All right. Okay, so now I'm inside this machine, right? So this machine is actually running on Azure. It's not a local machine. If I do have NLS, if I do have PWD, it's basically a virtual machine running on Azure. But other than that, it'll feel very much like any old machine. So maybe even your own laptop. You know, it just feels like, okay, you're running some command line applications inside of your own laptop. So let's go through the steps. We'll do a sudo apt update real quick. Okay. And that should be reasonably fast. I do have a reasonably okay network. All right, that's done. Next, we're going to do the install of the JDK. Yes. And by the way, although I'm doing all of this stuff manually, my main point is to show you, because the reason I'm doing that is the main point I want to show you is that this stuff is simple, right? IaaS is super simple. It's no different from doing this on your own machine. But in reality, you don't have to do all of this stuff manually like I'm doing. So there's a capability in Azure called an ARM template. So inside of the ARM template, you can actually do all of this, automate all of these things. So you don't have to type each command just like I'm doing. You can have all of the commands specified in the ARM template. The ARM template is really nothing much more than a JSON file. And then have all of these stuff automated. So you can do the same thing over and over again. You don't have to worry about typing errors and whatnot, right? But in this case, I just want to take it easy. I just want to show you how simple this actually is. All right. So Java is installed. Next thing is installing Maven. Okay. Yes. Okay. All set. Next is installing Payara itself. And this will be super simple. It's just download of a zip from wget. You can do an ls. Okay, there's my zip file. Next, I need to install unzip, so I can unzip this file. It's surprising. You would think most operating system builds would just come with unzip, but not the case. All right, that's done. Let's unzip the Payara. All right. And there you have it. Payara is now installed, right? And in fact, let's rm the zip file. No reason to keep that around. All right. Good. So Payara 5 is installed. It's all ready, set to go. That's all you need in order to install Payara. Now I'm going to download the application itself, right? So I can download the application code, and I can build the application code on this machine. Again, normally you would probably do this through your CI/CD pipeline. All right, so m.reza.rahman. All right, so there's where my application resides. I'm going to go and download that. All right, there we go. And there's my application. It's called master.zip. And then I'm going to unzip that bad boy. So I'm going to say unzip master.zip. Alrighty. And there we go. Okay, so there's my application. It's called Java EE Azure Master. All right, now I'm going to do an mvn install of this application. Okay, so I need to go into the application and actually install it. So I'm going to do that. All right. And the application is under the Jakarta EE directory. All right. And it's called Java EE Cafe. All right. And as you can see, there will be, oops, oh, caps lock. And as you can see, there's a POM file, there's a source directory. This is where my application resides. So I'm going to just do an mvn clean install. Okay, and that's going to give me my war file. All right, so I have my war file. It's in the target directory. I think you can trust me, so I can move on from this. So I'm going to now change directories back to home. Okay, so I'm going to just do this, and I'm back home. But okay, that was, yeah. All right, we're back home. All right, so here's my home directory. Next things that I need to do, I will need a sudo permission for, because I'll be basically changing a lot of file systems, and I'll be opening up ports, port 80 specifically. So in order for me to do that, I need to sudo su, right? So I won't be able to do that if I'm not super user. So I need to do that next. So I'll just do this, sudo su, and lo and behold, I'm now super user. And now I can do the rest of the stuff that I need to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start the Payara domain. Okay, so I'm going to go here and start Payara. Okay, so Payara is now up and running. It's running on port admin port 4848, which doesn't help me very much. Okay, so I need to change the port to something that is actually useful. So I'm going to run this little asadmin command. If you've never seen it before, it's asadmin is basically Payara execution. Okay, and I'm going to change. Basically, the main thing I'm going to do here is change to port 80. Okay, so I can actually look at the server. So I'm going to just copy this long string over. Okay, and I'm going to execute it. All right, port 80. Okay, so that is now executed. And just to show you it is working, I'm going to go over to the Cafe server, copy over the public address. And this Payara running. Okay, so this is Payara running on Azure using a virtual machine. Pretty simple stuff. So after that, I need to install the JDBC driver, because basically over here I need a JDBC driver to connect to my database. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's a pretty simple command as well. All right, so now my database driver is installed. And finally, what I can do is I can actually execute the command to basically deploy the application. So it's Payara asadmin deploy and the name of my war file. So I'm going to copy this over and paste. All right, run this. Uh-oh, file not found. Okay, why is that? So let's take a look. Did I mess something up? Where am I? I'm in PWD. What are my files? Okay, something is wrong. So let's see if we can figure out what is wrong. Jakartai Azure Master IaaS Jakartai Cafe target Jakartai Cafe.war. Let's make sure this this path actually exists. So I'm going to just, as you see, whenever you're doing a demo, something has to go wrong. This is the rule. So we're going to cd into this directory and see what is going on. Why do we not have the var where it belongs? Interesting. All right. So what about the target directory doesn't exist? How about this? Okay, that doesn't exist either. Interesting. So Jakarta Cafe source IaaS master. Okay, so let's do a mvn clean install here real quick. I don't know why this didn't work, but well, bear with me. Okay. All right. Okay, now let's cd back into /home Payara. Okay, and let's try to re-execute that command, and hopefully this time it works. And this is probably the most time-consuming thing. So let me take a look. Is there any other steps I need to do here? I think we're on home run. So yeah, I think we're all set. I think once this deployment completes, I can just show you the application running. Yeah, deployed successfully. Okay, so now let's go onto my virtual machine. There it is. I'm just going to reload it just for fun. And I'm going to see if the application is actually available here. So Jakarta EE Cafe, and there we have it. So there's no data in here, but let's put in some data. Okay, so I'm going to put Reza1, some amount, Reza2, some other amount, and hit OK. All right, so I have 2 bits of data, and so my application is working fine. Right, and there you have it. That's all you really need to do in order to basically get a virtual machine set up and have an application run on the cloud. Very simple. Okay, so now I'm going to actually quit. I'm sorry. Okay, and I think it's exit. Yeah, okay. Alrighty. So I'm back in my own home directory now on my local machine. Not yet. All right. Okay, I need to do exit one more time. Okay, there's my local machine. It's C drive. So good old Windows. Okay, so that's it in terms of the IaaS. So now I'm going to show you the Kubernetes part. Okay, that's probably a little bit more interesting. So let's start with Kubernetes. And again, all of the artifacts here are there. Everything you can do by yourself. It's going to ask you to do the same thing again. So when you need a database, you don't have to do it another time. As long as you have the database set up, which we still do. So I can go to my dashboard, go to resource groups, and go on to Jakarta Cafe group. And there's my database still sitting there. So I don't have to do anything with this at all. Okay. The next step is to set up the Kubernetes cluster, which I've also already done. Okay, so the Kubernetes cluster usually takes about 15 or 20 minutes. So since we don't have 15 or 20 minutes, I just thought, I'm just going to do this ahead of time instead of doing it during my talk. So there that is. Okay, so if you go on to here, this is the cluster. Okay, if I show you, for example, our insights, okay, you'll see that there's nothing going on, right? So obviously I'm not running anything. There's no node CPU utilization. There's no node memory utilization. There's actually 3 nodes because the 3 nodes that are already running. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So the next step is to connect up Kubernetes Control. Okay, so you can also do this very easily running this one little command. It's using AZ. AZ is the Azure command line interface. But once you do this, you basically have set up kube control or Kubernetes locally. Now the rest of your experience is basically very, very simple, right? Because it's all command line driven. It's as though you're running running Kubernetes locally. So let me show you. So kube control. So I know that there's nothing running right now. So there's just Kubernetes itself in terms of the services that are running. I could do nodes. Okay, and you can see that I have 3 nodes running. And if I run pods, hopefully I'll get nothing. Yeah, no pods yet. I haven't created any machines yet. I have a few nodes, but no pods yet. So that is basically what you need to do there. Let me close this browser window. All right, so the next step is the same as before, basically. So you need to basically create your application first. You need to build your application first. You need to build your WAR file. So let's go ahead and do that. I believe it's documents, GitHub, the Azure. Okay, and here we have it. I'm gonna cd into the Kubernetes directory. All right, in here I have a copy of the application, Jakarta Cafe. Right, I'm going to do a Maven clean install. Okay, so now I have my WAR file ready to go. Okay, but that's not going to be enough. After I have this WAR file, I actually need to put it inside of Docker. Okay, so basically the way this works is you have your artifact, whether it's a jar or a WAR file, and then you need to put it inside of a Docker image. And if you've never seen Docker before, I'll step you through it. Okay, so let's first things first, I'm going to build this Docker image, and I'll explain to you what the syntax is actually doing. So I'm in the right spot. Okay, and I'll explain what is going on here in a second. Okay. So the command that I'm about to run is basically docker build. So that means build my Docker image. -T is a name of the Docker image, and the full name of my Docker image is Reza Rahman, which is going to match up to my GitHub ID, and I'll show you Dockerhub ID. I'll show you my Dockerhub, what's in my Dockerhub in a second. Then I need to give it a name, Jakarta Cafe, and give it a version. I'm naming it version 1. And the dot stands for where is your Docker file. In other words, what is actually contained within your Docker image. Okay, so the dot means I'm looking at the same directory of this file here, Dockerfile, and we'll take a look at the contents of the Dockerfile after we finish this guy, after we build this guy. So let's build him. All right, so that all worked. Okay, so as you can see, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll show you what these steps are in a second. But before we do that, let's go look at my Dockerhub account. Here's my Dockerhub account. There is already a build there. I'm going to actually delete this one. Just to be on the safe side. Okay, delete. It's deleted, so I have nothing on no repositories here anymore. It's completely clean, but let's leave this open for a second. So now let me show you what exactly is in the Dockerfile. So let's bump up here. The Dockerfile is here. All right, so in the Dockerfile, what am I doing? So the Dockerfile basically describes how your operating system, how does your machine actually look like. So it looks a lot like Unix commands. In fact, it's a clone of Unix commands. So you always will start with some kind of base image in Docker. So in this case, I'm choosing with the Payara base image, and I'm using the full server image. Okay, so that Payara server full is actually, if you go onto Dockerhub and if you search for that string, you'll see that there's an image defined for that. So that's my base image, and it'll come with a whole bunch of stuff like an operating system, probably CentOS. It'll come with the JDK. It'll come with the right version of Payara. So next I need to do a copy. So wherever my WAR file is, I'm going to copy that WAR file into the deployment directory. So $deploy dir is basically where Payara's deployment directory is installed. So I just need to copy over that WAR file. And I also need to copy over my Postgres file as well, because I need that, remember? And then I'm going to simply run a command. So this command is basically going to install my JDBC driver with Payara using the add library ASAdmin command. Don't worry about it if you don't understand the syntax of it. If you want to understand what is going on here, just read the Payara documentation on how to add a jar file to Payara server. But basically 4 lines, and these are the 4 steps that I just executed. So now I have my Docker image. That's great. But what do I do with the Docker image? I need to do something useful with it. So in order for me to do anything useful with it, the next thing I need to do is upload this Docker image onto Dockerhub. So the reason I need to do that is because Kubernetes, remember, is running on Azure. Okay, so Kubernetes cannot, that cluster cannot access my local machine, but it can access Dockerhub. right? So I'm going to upload. I need to upload this Docker image into Dockerhub. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's called a push, right? So going in here, paste, and I'm going to say I'm going to basically, it's saying push this Docker image onto that onto Dockerhub basically. All right, so I'm going to run this command. So now this is going to actually upload the entire Docker image onto Dockerhub. Some problems with this, sometimes not. I think what I'm going to do is let this run a little bit. Usually, this will only only take a bit of time the very first time. But then once you've done this, when you do it subsequently, you don't have to upload the entire Docker image. In fact, I'll show you that in action. So this is only, that's because how Docker caching and layering works. Okay, so let this finish. In the meanwhile, let me show you what the next steps are going to be. So after the Docker image, what I'm going to do is run a YAML file, okay, and issue the kube-control create command. So what this is going to do is that it's going to create whatever resources are defined in this YAML file, and I'll show you what precisely that are defined here next. This is basically my entire setup, my entire Payara setup. So if I go up here and I look at the YAML file, this is how it looks like. Okay. So basically saying that this is a kind of deployment. I'm deploying something. What am I deploying? Well, I'm deploying an application. And the spec for this application is that I want 2 machines. So that was replicas equals 2. That's what that means. I want 2 instances of whatever it is that I'm going to run. And then there is the image definition itself. Okay, so in this case, the image definition is Jakarta cafe.v1. Okay, so this is where it's going to pull from. So it's going to pull literally from. And by the way, I should. Okay, so there's nothing there yet. It's probably still uploading. Yeah, still uploading. Going back here. So once this is done uploading, it's going to basically reside in that location. Okay, on my Docker Hub, and then that's it. I'll create basically whatever is in that Docker Hub, which is Payara and my application. I'll create 2 instances of that. And then because I have 2 instances, the question is, okay, how are you going to access these 2 instances? So Docker, so Kubernetes networking is also very confusing. Okay, so those 2 machines that will be run is actually not accessible to you. You won't be able to access those machines. In order for them to access it, you need to create a kind of service. So the service is the only thing that can talk to the outside world. So in this case, I'm going to create a service, and the type of service is going to be a load balancer. Okay, and Payara by default runs on port 8080. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the load balancer to take all of the traffic that will come to port 80 and redirect it to port 8080 instead. Okay, and that's how I'm going to get everything running. And I will need to make one small change to my Dockerfile before I can run it. And so let's go ahead and make that change right now. GitHub, Jakarta Azure, Kubernetes. Here's my YAML file. I'm going to open up a text pad. I need to just change this to be the name of my Docker Hub repository. All right, Reza Rahman. And the rest of it can stay the same. I can just hit save. And Reza Rahman. Yeah, looks good. All right. Closing that and closing this. And let's see how much longer this is going to take. Oh, my goodness. The network is super slow today. I hope this is going to finish soon. Okay. In the meanwhile, what can I show you? So going back here, I can show you. I can show you how I'm going to get the name of the service, right? So once I do get services, so if I do, I can use a command line right now either. I'm going to get the name of the services, and remember that I created a service of type load balancer. So when I issue this command, you'll see the list of services pop up, and one of the services is going to be the load balancer. Okay, so when we get the load balancer IP, we can then access this cluster, meaning set of 2 machines, just like you would in the VM case. All right. How are we doing? Still taking a little bit of time. I hope this is going to finish soon. I should have done this step. I should have cheated and done this step earlier also, so that you can not have to wait and watch me do this. But I will show you what happens the second time we do this. Right. So the second time we do this, it doesn't have to be so slow. The second time, the next push we do and the next build we do is going to be very, very fast. All right. And I don't think I want to show you anything quite here yet. All right, so let's do this. In the remaining time that there is while this is running, why don't you guys ask me some questions? You guys want to ask me some questions while uploads happening?
Hello, questions? Questions, my friends?
No? Nobody has any questions at all?
Zero?
All right. Let's hope this finishes soon. Who should be, I hope.
Okay.
Almost there. But like I said, I will show you that this is only the first time, right? So this is the Docker understands these problems very, very well and has ways of dealing with this problem. So let's just wait a little bit.
Okay.
All right, so that is all done. Okay, so let me go and now go to my Docker Hub.
Right. One question, Reza.
Yeah, tell me. What's the question? Let me go see. Friends questions. Is there a Kubernetes service on Azure? Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm running right now. So I'm running the Azure Kubernetes service. This is the Azure Kubernetes service that you're looking at right now. In fact, so absolutely that is the case. So now I have my application up and running. Let me show you what happens next time I make a change, though. Okay, so let's pretend to make a change. So I'm going to go into my documents. I'm going to go into GitHub. I'm going to go into Jakarta, Azure. I'm going to go into Kubernetes in the application. I'm going to go to the source, main, web app. Let's open up the index.html file. Okay, and we're going to say, so Java Cafe. How's that? Okay, so we're going to save this guy. So now we need to build a new WAR file, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So in the, all right, cd cafe, all right, and MVN package, like somebody said. All right, so we have a new WAR file built. We're going to go back into the Kubernetes directory. We're going to rebuild the image. All right, so let's rebuild it. Docker build. Okay. And now let's do a push this time, and let's see what happens. You notice what happened? It's much faster. So I'll explain to you why that is. This is an important thing to understand while you're using Java EE with Docker. So what Docker does is that there's 4 lines here, right? Each of these lines is actually a layer, right? So really the only thing that changed is this layer. All right, so this is the war file was updated, it's up to date. So everything above there, this is the one that actually took time, right? So this is already cached. So you only needed to execute these following commands. So that's why it was much faster the second time around. And now let's go ahead and actually do something with this image. So let's go down here, and we're going to actually create this application on Azure, okay, on the Azure cluster. So we're going to paste this here and hit enter. All right, it says it's created, but it's not really true. Okay, so because it takes a little while for the load balancer to actually get created. So let me show you what that's the case. So I'm going to do a kube control get services Jakarta e-cafe, which is the name of my service, and I'm going to watch it. Okay, so I'm going to just do this. Oh, it's already there. So this is the external IP, okay, of my load balancer. So I can just copy this guy. Okay, we can just use this window, it's fine. Okay, what's happening here? Let's do kube control get pods running. Okay, so maybe just taking a little bit of time to warm up. Sometimes this takes a little more time than it actually tells you. Okay. No, not yet. Okay. Oh, I'm telling you, it takes a little bit of time for the load balancer to actually get propagated in Azure. But as you can see, this is now running on Azure. We're able to access the Payara cluster. Okay, and I'm hitting an instance of Payara. Let me hit enter on this a little bit. Do some deleting. I'll create something. All right. So that's all working. Okay. And it's running on Kubernetes. It's running on the Kubernetes cluster. I'll show you that this is actually what's happening. Okay, so if you go to the overview now, let's go back to Insights, and you'll notice there's a little bit of there should be a little bit of a spike. This also sometimes takes a little bit of time to catch up. So things are not as quick as you might think. Let's at least see if the node count increased. So the node count is also up to 3. Let's see the pod count. So the active pod count is now up to 2. Okay, so so at least the pod count has increased, and both are running. So both are in running state. Okay, you can take a look at these two, and let's see if at least some kind of I should get some kind of a CPU spike from my accessing of that page and doing the deleting and whatnot. Not sure what's going on, but this basically is supposed to tell you all of the information that's happening. So let's take a look at maybe nodes and pods. Okay, that's a node name, deployments. All right, let's try cluster once again. There we go. So you see, it takes a little bit of time for things to catch up in Azure Application Insights. It's not real time, but you can see that spike, a little bit of a spike when I was doing the little bit of activity. So this is a CPU spike, tiny memory spike, right? This is not a memory intensive application, so a little bit of a memory activity also. So that's it. That's how it is. Kubernetes is not a scary thing. It's pretty simple stuff, and you can do all of this stuff by yourself. You don't have to you don't have to sort of wonder what is going on. You can it's simple stuff and very accessible stuff. All you need to do is log onto this GitHub repository. Actually, let me copy this into the chat, okay? And I'll also give it to the organizers you can just log on onto this URL and try all of this stuff out by yourself. So let me go back to the chat. Can I actually do a chat? Live comments. How do I share something? Can I share a comment? Doesn't look like, right?
Okay.
Maybe private chat, but that's not going to work, right? Let me try this. Oh, doesn't work. I'm not sure how I get into here. I'm not sure. All right. Thank you. So Java did it for me. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's it for my time. I appreciate you guys coming here and sort of watching my presentation. If there's any questions, I can show you. I can give you a little bit of can do a little bit of Q&A. Otherwise, we can. I can say goodbye to you for today, and thanks for attending the session. So, any questions?
Oh, no questions. Friends,
all right.
More questions?
Okay. I guess not. That's okay. Thank you very much for having me. It's been my pleasure, and hopefully you got something out of this.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you for lecturing.
Sure, no problem.
Very good. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.